That summer day began just like any other, filled with the kind of warmth and brightness that makes you believe everything is going to be okay. But by the time the sun started to set, I found myself sitting in my car, tears streaming down my face in a way I hadn't experienced in years. My own daughter, the child I had raised with every ounce of love and sacrifice I possessed, had looked me straight in the eyes and pushed me into the cold water of her pool. Her words still echoed in my mind, sharp and cruel. "Take a bath. You smell gross." Her college friends had burst into laughter, as if this were the funniest joke they had ever heard. Standing there completely soaked, my heart shattered into pieces so small I wondered if I would ever be able to put them back together. But those same people who had laughed at me that day would soon learn a lesson they wouldn't forget. Hurting someone who loves you unconditionally comes with a price. Before I go any further, I want to thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Today, I want to give a special shout out to Chandra Zen from Jacksonville, Florida. Thank you for being a part of our family. Now, let me tell you everything. Maybe you'll understand what it feels like when the person you raised, the person you loved more than life itself, treats you like you're nothing in front of others. Stay with me as I share exactly what happened that day and how karma works much faster than most people realize. I grew up in poverty, with holes in my shoes and empty kitchen cabinets. Everything I ever owned, I earned through hard work. So much hard work that my hands would bleed. When I became a mother, I made a promise to myself. My little girl would never know the kind of hunger or shame I had endured. So I worked 3 jobs just to keep food on our table. I sewed her clothes by candlelight when the electricity was cut off because I couldn't pay the bill. I walked 10 miles to work so she could take the school bus and feel like a normal kid. I gave up dating, gave up friendships, gave up every dream I ever had so she could have hers instead. When she was sick, I stayed awake all night, watching her breathe, praying she would get better. When she needed school supplies, I sold my jewelry to buy them. When she wanted to go to college, I took out loans that I'm still paying off today. Every single sacrifice felt worth it because I believed she would grow up to be grateful. I thought she would remember all those nights I went to bed hungry so she could eat. I thought that when she became successful, she would look back and say thank you. But life has a way of teaching you that love doesn't always come back the way you give it. The little girl who used to hug my legs and call me her hero slowly turned into someone I barely recognized. College changed her. Success changed her. Money changed her. She started caring more about what her fancy friends thought than about the woman who had raised her. I could see it in her eyes when she looked at me, embarrassment, shame, as if I were some old, unwanted thing she wanted to hide away. But I kept telling myself it was just a phase. That deep down she still loved me. That all those years of bedtime stories and bandaging scraped knees still mattered somewhere in her heart. I kept believing that one day she would remember who I was and what I meant to her. But as months turned into years, especially after she landed her big job in the city, I saw less of my daughter and more of a stranger who acted like I was a burden she had to carry. Still, I never stopped loving her. I never stopped hoping that maybe this time when I visited, she would smile at me with the same eyes that used to light up when I came home from work. I never stopped believing that somewhere inside her grown-up heart, my little girl was still there, waiting to come back to me. That day, the day of the pool party, I spent hours getting ready. I wanted to look nice for her friends. I wanted her to be proud to call me her mother. I put on my best dress, the blue one I had bought for her graduation. I baked my famous chocolate chip cookies, the same recipe she had loved as a child. I even practiced what I would say to her friends, hoping they would see me as more than just some old lady. I drove to her apartment with butterflies in my stomach, carrying those warm cookies and a heart full of hope. I never imagined that within an hour, I would be sitting in my car, crying harder than I had in years. I never thought my own child would hurt me so deeply in front of people who meant nothing to me. When I knocked on her door that afternoon, I could hear music and laughter coming from the backyard. Young voices mixed together like a symphony of joy. For a moment I felt excited. Maybe today would be different. Maybe she would introduce me with pride instead of that tired, embarrassed look she always gave me. Maybe her friends would see that I wasn't just some old woman to be tolerated, but a mother who had given everything for her child. She opened the door, wearing a beautiful summer dress, one I had helped pay for, though she had probably forgotten that detail. Her smile was bright, but it didn't reach her eyes when she saw me standing there with my container of cookies. "Oh, you're here," she said, as if she hadn't invited me herself just 2 days before. I followed her through the apartment, my heart already starting to sink as I noticed how she walked ahead of me instead of beside me. The backyard was filled with beautiful young people lounging around a sparkling pool. Everyone looked like they had stepped out of a magazine, with their perfect clothes and perfect smiles. I felt old and out of place immediately, but I tried to shake it off. These were her friends. This was her world now. I wanted to be part of it, even if just for one afternoon. I set my cookies on the table next to fancy store-bought appetizers that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a week. Nobody seemed to notice them, or me. The conversations continued around me as if I were invisible. My daughter didn't introduce me to anyone. She didn't offer me a chair or a drink. She just left me standing there like an unwanted guest at my own child's party. I tried to smile and nod when people glanced my way, but their looks felt cold and judging, as if they were wondering why some old lady was crashing their fun. I found a quiet spot by the fence and watched my daughter laugh with her friends. She looked so happy and confident, nothing like the shy little girl I used to read bedtime stories to. Part of me felt proud seeing her so successful and popular, but another part of me felt like a stranger looking in on someone else's life. I wondered if she ever told these people about me. Did they know I was the one who worked double shifts to pay for her school? Did they know I was the one who held her when she cried over her first broken heart? Did they know I was the reason she could afford this nice apartment and these fancy parties? Or was I just some embarrassing secret she wished would go away? The sun was hot and my dress was sticking to my back. I thought about leaving, but something in me hoped she would notice me standing there and come over to talk. That's when I heard her voice rise above the music and chatter. She was telling some story to her friends, gesturing wildly with her hands the way she always did when she got excited. But as I listened closer, my blood ran cold. She was making fun of me, talking about how I had embarrassed her at the grocery store last week. She was imitating the way I talked, the way I dressed, the way I carefully counted my money at the checkout line. Her friends were eating it up, giggling and adding their own comments about parents who just didn't understand modern life. I stood there frozen as my own daughter painted me as some pathetic old woman who couldn't keep up with the world. Every word felt like a knife in my chest. This was the same child I had rocked to sleep every night for years. The same child I had cheered for at every school play and soccer game. Before I could even process what was happening, she noticed me listening, and her expression changed. Instead of looking sorry or embarrassed, she looked annoyed, as if I had caught her doing something wrong and now she had to deal with me. "Speaking of embarrassing," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "maybe you should jump in the pool and cool off. You're starting to smell like mothballs and old lady perfume." The group erupted in laughter, mean, cruel laughter that echoed off the water and bounced around my heart like bullets. I felt my face burn with shame and shock, but before I could respond, before I could even breathe, she put her hands on my shoulders and pushed hard. The shock of hitting that cold water stole every thought from my mind. I went under completely, my carefully styled hair and makeup ruined in seconds. My best dress floated around me like a burial shroud. When I came up gasping and sputtering, the first thing I heard wasn't concern or an apology. It was more laughter, loud, heartless laughter from people who found my pain entertaining. I looked around through the blur of chlorine water in my eyes and saw them all pointing and covering their mouths, as if they were children watching someone slip on a banana peel. My daughter stood there at the edge of the pool, looking pleased with herself, as if she had just performed some great comedy routine for her audience. She was smiling the biggest smile I had seen from her in years. But it wasn't the warm smile I remembered from her childhood. It was cold and mean, directed at my humiliation. In that moment, something inside me died, not just my dignity or my pride, but the last little bit of hope I had been carrying, that my daughter still loved me somewhere deep down. I pulled myself out of that pool slowly, water pouring off me like tears. I was too shocked to cry yet. My cookies were scattered on the ground where someone had knocked over the container, probably while laughing at me. Chocolate chips mixed with dirt and grass, just like my dreams of having a relationship with my child. Nobody offered me a towel. Nobody asked if I was okay. They just kept laughing and making jokes about how funny I looked, all wet and pathetic. I wanted to scream at all of them. I wanted to grab my daughter and shake her, asking her how she could be so cruel to the person who loved her most in this world. But no words would come. My voice was trapped somewhere deep in my chest, along with all the hurt and disappointment. So I walked away in silence, leaving wet footprints on her perfect patio, carrying what was left of my broken heart. Every step toward my car felt like walking through quicksand. The laughter followed me, getting quieter but never really stopping, like an echo that would haunt me forever. I could still hear them making jokes as I fumbled with my keys, my hand shaking so badly I could barely unlock the door. When I finally got inside my car, I sat there dripping all over my cloth seats and cried like I hadn't cried since the day my husband died. But these tears were different. When he passed away, I had grieved for love that was taken from me. That day, I was grieving for love that had been thrown away. I thought about every sacrifice I had made, every dream I had given up, every dollar I had saved for her future instead of mine. All of it meant nothing to her now. All of it was just some embarrassing reminder of where she came from. I remembered when she was 5 years old and got scared during a thunderstorm. She had climbed into my bed and whispered, "Mama, promise you'll never leave me." I had held her tight and promised that nothing in this world could ever make me stop loving her. I had kept that promise, even when times got hard, even when money was tight, even when I was so tired I could barely stand up. But somewhere along the way, she had forgotten that little girl who needed her mama. She had forgotten the woman who worked 3 jobs just to buy her school clothes. She had forgotten the mother who went without, so she could have everything. As I started my car and drove away from that place, I felt empty inside. But underneath the hurt, something else was growing, something quiet and determined. Because while she had forgotten who I was, I still remembered exactly what I had given her, and what I had given her included more than just love and sacrifice. It included practical things, important things, the things that kept her fancy life running smoothly. The apartment she was so proud of. The lease was in both our names because she couldn't qualify for a loan when she first moved to the city. The credit card she used for all her parties and shopping, I was the co-signer because her credit wasn't good enough yet. The car she drove to impress her friends, the loan was secured against my house because banks trusted my 40 years of perfect payments more than her 2 years of entry-level salary. She had built her new life on the foundation I provided. But she had forgotten who laid the bricks. As I drove home with wet clothes sticking to my skin, I realized I wasn't the only one who could make decisions about our relationship. All these years, I had been the one reaching out, the one calling, the one trying to maintain our bond while she pulled further and further away. But love is supposed to go both ways. Respect is supposed to go both ways. And if she thought she could treat me like garbage in front of her friends without any consequences, she was about to learn differently. I wasn't going to yell or scream or make a scene. I wasn't going to stoop to her level of cruelty. But I also wasn't going to keep enabling someone who had no appreciation for what they had been given. When I got home, I took a long, hot shower and changed into comfortable clothes. Then I sat down at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and my address book. It was time to make some phone calls. Time to remind my daughter that actions have consequences, even when you think you're all grown up. The first call was to the apartment management company. "Yes, I'd like to discuss the lease that I co-signed for my daughter." "No, I will not be renewing it when it expires next month." They were very understanding when I explained that my financial situation had changed, and I could no longer be responsible for someone else's housing costs. The second call was to the credit card company. I need to remove myself as a co-signer from several accounts. The representative explained that this would likely result in the cards being canceled since my daughter's income alone didn't meet their requirements. I told them I understood completely. The third call was to my bank. "I'd like to discuss the auto loan that's secured against my house. Can I pay it off early and have the title transferred to my name only?" "Of course," they said. I had been such a reliable customer for so many years. Each phone call felt like taking back a piece of myself that I had given away too freely. I wasn't being mean or vindictive. I was simply making smart financial decisions for my own future. After all, I wouldn't be around forever, and I needed to make sure my affairs were in order. If my daughter wanted to live an independent adult life, then she should truly be independent. She shouldn't need her embarrassing old mother's help with anything. By the time I finished my calls, it was getting dark outside. I made myself a simple dinner and ate it in peaceful silence. For the first time in years, I didn't worry about whether she had eaten or if she needed anything from me. I didn't wonder if I should call to check on her. I just enjoyed my meal and thought about how nice it would be to have more evenings like this one, where I focused on taking care of myself instead of someone who didn't appreciate it. Meanwhile, back at her party, I imagined the celebration was still going strong. The music probably got louder as the evening went on. The laughter probably got more careless. My daughter was probably still basking in the attention from her performance earlier, still telling the story of how she pushed her pathetic mother into the pool. Her friends were probably still making jokes about old people and how clueless parents can be. None of them had any idea that changes were already set in motion. None of them knew that the foundation holding up their perfect little party was about to shift. I pictured her checking her phone occasionally, maybe wondering why I hadn't called or texted to apologize for embarrassing her. She was probably used to me reaching out first after our fights, used to me being the one to smooth things over and pretend everything was fine. But tonight was different. Tonight, my phone stayed silent because I had nothing to apologize for. I had done nothing wrong except love my child and show up when she invited me. The wrong was all hers, and for once, she was going to have to face the consequences without me running to fix everything for her. I went to bed that night feeling lighter than I had in months. Not happy, exactly, because my heart was still broken, but lighter, as if I had been carrying a heavy bag for years and finally set it down. I slept better than I had in ages, probably because I wasn't staying awake worrying about someone who clearly didn't worry about me. The next morning came with bright sunshine and a fresh perspective. I made my coffee and sat on my back porch, listening to the birds sing and feeling grateful for the peace and quiet of my own space. Around 10 my phone started ringing. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again 5 minutes later. Voicemail again. By the third call, I was curious enough to listen to the messages. The first one was my daughter's voice, but different than usual, higher pitched, worried. "Mom, call me back. Something weird is happening with my credit cards. They're not working, and I need to figure this out." The second message was more frantic. "Mom, seriously, call me back right now. My cards are canceled, and the apartment people called about the lease." "What's going on?" The third message was angry. "I know you're there, Mom. Pick up the phone. Whatever you think you're doing, you need to stop it right now. This isn't funny." I set my phone down and finished my coffee slowly. Let her sit with that panic for a while. Let her figure out what it felt like to have her world turned upside down by someone she thought she could trust. The calls kept coming all morning. Each message got more desperate, more angry, more confused. She couldn't understand how everything could fall apart so quickly. She couldn't figure out why all the financial help she had taken for granted was suddenly gone. In one message, she actually had the nerve to say I was being childish and that I needed to grow up and fix whatever I had broken. Grow up. I had grown up 40 years ago when I became responsible for another human being. I had grown up when I worked 3 jobs to keep a roof over her head. I had grown up when I put my own needs aside to focus on hers. She was the one who needed to grow up. She was the one who needed to learn that treating people badly has consequences. Around noon, she started calling from different numbers, probably thinking I was just avoiding her calls. But I wasn't avoiding anything. I was just choosing not to engage until she learned some respect. Finally, around 2 p.m, I answered. "Hello, sweetheart," I said in my calmest voice. "Oh, thank God," she said, and I could hear the relief mixed with anger. "Mom, what did you do?" "Everything is falling apart, and I know you did something. My credit cards are canceled. The apartment people want to talk about the lease, and something's wrong with my car loan." "Nothing's wrong," I said peacefully. "I just made some financial decisions that are better for my future. I'm getting older, you know, and I need to be more careful with my money." "What are you talking about?" She practically screamed. "You can't just cancel everything. I need those things. You're ruining my life." "I'm not ruining anything," I replied. I'm just stepping back and letting you handle your own adult responsibilities. Isn't that what you want? To not have your embarrassing old mother involved in your business? The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. I could practically hear her brain working, trying to figure out how to fix the situation without actually apologizing for what she had done. Finally, she said, "Look, I'm sorry about yesterday. Okay, my friends were drunk and things got out of hand. But you can't just destroy my entire life because of one stupid mistake." "One mistake?" I asked quietly. "Sweetie, this wasn't one mistake. This was you showing me exactly what you think of the woman who raised you. This was you making it clear that you're ashamed of me and that you don't want me in your life. I'm just giving you what you asked for." "That's not what I asked for," she cried. "I never said I didn't want you in my life." "You didn't have to say it," I told her. "You showed me yesterday in front of all your friends. Actions speak louder than words, and your actions told me everything I needed to know." She started crying then. Real tears, not the angry tantrum she had been throwing. "Mom, please." I messed up. I know I did, but I can't lose everything. I'll lose my apartment, my car, everything I've worked for. "Everything you've worked for?" I repeated. "Honey, you've been working for 2 years. I've been working for 40. Everything you have because I helped you get it. And yesterday you made it clear that instead of being grateful, you're embarrassed by where your help came from." "I'm not embarrassed," she said, but her voice was small and uncertain. "Yes, you are," I said gently. "And that's okay. It's normal for young people to want independence from their parents. But independence means standing on your own 2 feet, not standing on your mother's shoulders while pretending she doesn't exist." We talked for another hour, really talked, maybe for the first time in years. She cried and apologized over and over again. She admitted that she had been treating me badly, and that she was ashamed of how she had acted at the party. She said she had been so focused on impressing her friends that she had forgotten about the person who had always been there for her. She promised to do better, to include me more, to stop taking me for granted. But promises are easy to make when you're desperate. The real test would come later, when the crisis was over, and she had to choose between her old patterns and real change. I told her I would think about helping her with her immediate problems, but that our relationship needed to change fundamentally. I wasn't going to be her emergency contact anymore, the person she only called when she needed something. I wasn't going to be the embarrassing mother she hid from her friends. If she wanted my help, she had to want me, all of me, the parts that embarrassed her and the parts she was proud of. She had to introduce me to her friends as someone important, not someone she tolerated. She had to remember that I was a whole person with feelings and dignity, not just a bank account and a babysitter. Over the next few weeks, things slowly started to change. She called me every few days just to talk, not because she needed anything. She invited me to lunch and actually listened when I told her about my life. She started asking about my childhood and my dreams, things she had never cared about before. When she introduced me to new friends, she did it with pride instead of shame. She told them stories about how hard I had worked to give her opportunities. She even brought up some of the sacrifices I had made, which she had never acknowledged before. It wasn't perfect. Old habits don't change overnight, and sometimes I could still see that flash of embarrassment in her eyes when I did something she thought was uncool. But she was trying, really trying to see me as a person instead of just a mom. And I was trying too, to forgive the hurt she had caused and rebuild the trust that had been broken. The hardest part was learning to believe that her changes were real, and not just temporary desperation. But as months went by, and she kept showing up consistently, kept treating me with respect, even when her friends weren't watching, I started to feel hopeful again. Not the naive hope I had carried before, but a realistic hope based on evidence of real change. She even apologized to some of her friends who had been at the pool party, telling them that what had happened wasn't funny, and that she was ashamed of how she had treated me. One day, almost 6 months after the pool incident, she called me crying. But these weren't tears of desperation or anger. These were tears of realization. "Mom," she said through her sobs, "I was talking to my friend Sarah about her mother, and she was complaining about how her mom always calls and wants to spend time with her. And I suddenly realized that I used to complain about you the same way. But Sarah's mom is dying of cancer," she continued. "And now Sarah would give anything to have more time with her. And I thought about how I almost threw away our relationship over something so stupid as being embarrassed. I could have lost you forever because I was too selfish to see how lucky I was. That conversation was the turning point for both of us. She finally understood that parents aren't guaranteed forever, that the people who love you most are also the people you can hurt most deeply. She started making real efforts to include me in her life, not as an obligation, but as someone she genuinely wanted around. She introduced me to her new boyfriend with pride, telling him all about how I had raised her as a single mother. She invited me to office parties and social events, not caring if her sophisticated friends thought I was too simple or old-fashioned. She even started asking for my advice about work and relationships, valuing my experience instead of dismissing it as outdated. And I started sharing more of myself with her too. I told her about my dreams that I had put aside, my fears about getting older, my hopes for our future relationship. I stopped trying to be the perfect mother who never had needs of her own, and started being a real person who happened to also be her mom. Our relationship became more honest and deeper than it had ever been. Even when she was little, sometimes people ask me if I regret what I did that day, if I think I was too harsh in cutting off her financial support so suddenly. But I don't regret it at all. Sometimes love means setting boundaries. Sometimes love means letting people face the consequences of their actions so they can learn and grow. If I had just swallowed my hurt and continued enabling her bad behavior, nothing would have changed. She would have kept taking me for granted, and I would have kept feeling invisible and unappreciated. By standing up for myself, I forced her to see me as a real person with feelings that could be hurt. I showed her that relationships require mutual respect, even between parents and children. The pool party was the worst day of our relationship, but it was also the day that saved our relationship. It was the day she learned that love without respect is not enough, and it was the day I learned that sometimes you have to risk losing someone to truly keep them. Looking back now, I can see that we both needed that wake-up call. She needed to learn gratitude, and I needed to learn self-respect. She needed to understand that her actions had consequences, and I needed to understand that I deserved better treatment than I was accepting. The humiliation I felt that day was real and painful, but it led to something better than what we had before. It led to an honest relationship based on mutual respect instead of a one-sided relationship based on guilt and obligation. Today, when she has parties or social events, I'm invited, not as an afterthought but as an honored guest. When she introduces me to people, it's with genuine pride and affection. When she talks about her childhood, she focuses on the love and sacrifice instead of the embarrassing parts. And when we're together, I see glimpses of that little girl who used to hug my legs and call me her hero. She's still there, just wrapped up in a grown woman's body and responsibilities. The pool party taught us both important lessons about love and respect and forgiveness. It taught her that the people who love you most deserve your best behavior, not your worst. It taught me that setting boundaries doesn't mean stopping love. It means protecting it. It taught us both that family relationships require work and attention and mutual respect to survive. We still have our moments of frustration with each other, but now we talk through them instead of letting resentment build up. We still disagree sometimes, but we do it with kindness instead of cruelty. We still have different perspectives on life, but we respect each other's right to those differences. The most important thing I learned is that you can't force someone to respect you, but you can refuse to accept disrespect. You can't make someone appreciate your sacrifices, but you can stop making sacrifices for people who don't value them. You can't control how others treat you, but you can control how you respond to that treatment. That day at the pool, I felt powerless and humiliated. But by the end of that week, I had reclaimed my power by making choices that protected my dignity and forced accountability. I didn't get revenge, I got respect. I didn't destroy our relationship. I rebuilt it on a stronger foundation. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to enable their bad behavior. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is demand the treatment you deserve. The pool party was almost 3 years ago now, and our relationship has never been stronger. She calls me regularly just to chat about her day. She visits me on weekends, and we cook together like we used to when she was young. She includes me in her major decisions and asks for my advice on everything from work problems to decorating her new apartment, which she qualified for on her own this time. When she got promoted at work, I was the first person she called. When she had her wisdom teeth removed, she asked me to take care of her, trusting me to see her vulnerable and in pain. When she started dating someone seriously, she brought him to meet me within the first month, eager for my approval and input. These might seem like small things to some people, but to me, they represent everything I had hoped for in our relationship. She treats me like someone important in her life, not like someone she has to tolerate because we share DNA. She values my opinion and respects my feelings and includes me in her happiness instead of only calling when she needs help. Last month, she threw me a surprise birthday party and invited all my friends and neighbors. She made a beautiful speech about how grateful she was for everything I had done for her over the years, and how sorry she was that it took her so long to truly appreciate it. There wasn't a dry eye in the room, including mine, but the part that meant the most to me wasn't the public recognition. It was seeing how proud she was to be my daughter, how she lit up when people complimented her on the party she had planned, how she stayed close to me all evening instead of disappearing to chat with other people. She has learned that honoring the people who raised you isn't embarrassing. It's beautiful. She has learned that acknowledging your roots doesn't hold you back. It gives you strength. She has learned that being grateful for sacrifices doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. And I have learned that demanding respect doesn't make you mean, it makes you healthy. I have learned that setting boundaries doesn't damage relationships, it protects them. I have learned that you can forgive someone's past behavior while still requiring better behavior in the future. Our story could have ended that day at the pool with a broken relationship and two people too stubborn to apologize. Instead, it became the beginning of the best chapter of our relationship, the chapter where we both grew up and learned to treat each other the way we wanted to be treated. If you're dealing with a family member who takes you for granted or treats you disrespectfully, I want you to know that you don't have to accept that behavior just because you're related. Love doesn't mean being a doormat. Being a parent doesn't mean sacrificing your dignity. Being family doesn't mean tolerating abuse or cruelty or contempt. You can love someone deeply and still require them to treat you well. You can be supportive without being enabling. You can forgive past hurts while still protecting yourself from future ones. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is stop accepting unacceptable behavior. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them experience the consequences of their choices. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is stand up for yourself, even when it's scary and uncomfortable. My daughter and I both had to learn these lessons the hard way, through tears and arguments and difficult conversations. But we learned them, and our relationship is stronger now because of what we went through. If she hadn't pushed me in that pool, if I hadn't stood up for myself afterward, we might still be stuck in that unhealthy pattern of disrespect and resentment. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. Sometimes you have to go through the darkness to get to the light. Sometimes you have to break something completely before you can rebuild it properly. That pool party was our rock bottom, but it was also our turning point. It was the day we both realized that we had to change if we wanted to keep each other in our lives. It was the day we learned that love alone isn't enough without respect and appreciation and kindness. 3 years later, when she tells the story of that day, she doesn't laugh about pushing me in the pool. She tells it with tears in her eyes and shame in her voice. She uses it as an example of the worst version of herself, the person she never wants to be again. She tells people about the lesson she learned that day, about how quickly you can lose someone you love if you don't treat them right. She talks about how patient and forgiving I was, how I could have cut her out of my life forever, but chose instead to teach her a lesson she desperately needed to learn. Sometimes, she brings up that day when we're having a disagreement about something small, reminding herself not to take me for granted or speak to me disrespectfully. "I don't want to be the person I was at that pool party," she'll say. And I know she's holding herself accountable for treating me with kindness. That's how I know the change in her is real and lasting. It's not just guilt or fear of consequences anymore. It's genuine understanding of what she almost lost and determination never to risk losing it again. She has become the daughter I always hoped she would be. Not perfect, but thoughtful and grateful and loving in ways that feel authentic and sustainable. And I have become a stronger mother, one who loves deeply but also demands respect. The pool party taught us both that family relationships require the same care and respect as any other important relationship in your life. You can't treat people badly just because they're stuck with you. You can't take advantage of unconditional love by giving conditional respect in return. You can't assume that someone will always be there no matter how you treat them. Some people might think our story has a fairy tale ending, but real life isn't that simple. We still have work to do on our relationship every day. We still have to choose kindness over convenience, respect over resentment, gratitude over entitlement. But the difference is that now, we're both choosing to do that work. We're both committed to being better than we were before. I share this story not to embarrass my daughter or to make myself look like a hero, but to encourage other people who might be struggling with similar situations. Whether you're a parent dealing with an ungrateful child or an adult child who has been taking your parents for granted, it's never too late to change the pattern. It's never too late to start treating each other with the love and respect you both deserve. Sometimes, it takes a crisis to wake people up to what they're about to lose. Sometimes you have to be willing to walk away before someone realizes they don't want you to go. Sometimes, you have to stop being available for people who only want you when it's convenient for them. But if both people are willing to do the work, if both people are committed to change, then broken relationships can be healed, stronger than they ever were before. My daughter and I are living proof of that. We went from barely speaking to being best friends. We went from hurting each other to protecting each other. We went from taking each other for granted to treasuring every moment we have together. It didn't happen overnight, and it wasn't always easy. But it was worth every difficult conversation and every uncomfortable moment of growth. If you're watching this and feeling hopeless about a broken relationship in your own family, don't give up. Don't accept disrespect, but don't give up on love either. Set boundaries, demand better treatment, hold people accountable for their actions, but also leave room for forgiveness and growth and change. People can surprise you with their capacity to learn and grow, especially when they realize what they stand to lose if they don't. My daughter surprised me with how completely she was able to change her attitude and behavior. I surprised myself with how much I was able to forgive and how strong I could be when I needed to protect my own dignity. Our relationship today is better than I ever dreamed it could be. We talk every day. We laugh together and cry together and support each other through life's ups and downs. We respect each other's opinions and value each other's presence in our lives. We have built something beautiful out of something that was once broken. And I'm so grateful for the journey that brought us here, even the painful parts, especially the painful parts, because without that pain, we never would have found our way to this joy. Today, she's planning her wedding, and I'm the first person she talks to about every detail. She asks my opinion on dresses and flowers and venues, not because she has to, but because she wants to. She tells me she can't imagine walking down the aisle without me there to see it, and I know she means it from the bottom of her heart. When she talks about having children someday, she talks about wanting to be the kind of mother I was to her. She talks about the bedtime stories she wants to tell and the traditions she wants to pass down. She talks about teaching her children to be grateful and respectful and kind, the way she wishes she had learned those lessons earlier. Sometimes, she asks me to tell her stories about when she was little, about the things I did for her that she was too young to remember or appreciate at the time. She listens with wonder and gratitude, as if hearing about her own childhood for the first time. And maybe, in some ways, she is. Maybe it took growing up and almost losing our relationship for her to truly understand what she had been given. The pool party was the worst day of our relationship, but it led to the best years of our relationship. It taught us both lessons we needed to learn about love and respect and forgiveness. It showed us that even when things seem hopeless, even when hurt runs deep, healing is possible if both people are willing to do the work. It proved that sometimes, the most difficult experiences lead to the most beautiful outcomes. I want to end by saying to anyone who is watching this and feeling hopeless about a broken relationship in their own family, don't give up. Don't accept disrespect, but don't give up on love either. Set boundaries, demand better treatment, hold people accountable for their actions, but also leave room for forgiveness and growth and change. People can surprise you with their capacity to learn and grow, especially when they realize what they stand to lose if they don't. My daughter surprised me with how completely she was able to change her attitude and behavior. I surprised myself with how much I was able to forgive and how strong I could be when I needed to protect my own dignity. Our relationship today is better than I ever dreamed it could be. We talk every day. We laugh together and cry together and support each other through life's ups and downs. We respect each other's opinions and value each other's presence in our lives. We have built something beautiful out of something that was once broken. And I'm so grateful for the journey that brought us here. Even the painful parts. Especially the painful parts. Because without that pain, we never would have found our way to this joy. Thank you for listening to my story and for being part of the family. Your support and encouragement mean everything to me. If this story touched your heart or taught you something valuable, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Please subscribe and leave me a comment telling me about your own experiences with family relationships, forgiveness, and second chances. I love hearing from all of you and learning about your stories too. Remember that every ending can be a new beginning if you're willing to do the work to make it so. Remember that love is not just a feeling. It's a choice we make every day to treat each other with kindness and respect. Remember that it's never too late to apologize, to change, to do better than you did before. And remember that you are worthy of respect and kindness and appreciation, no matter who you are or where you come from. Until next time. This is reminding you that every story has the power to change someone's life, including your own. God bless you all, and I'll see you in the next video. Keep sharing your stories. Keep being brave enough to change when change is needed, and keep believing that better days are always possible. Love and respect to each and every one of you beautiful souls watching this today. And to my daughter, if you're watching this, thank you for growing up to be the amazing woman you are today. Thank you for doing the hard work of change, and for never giving up on us. Thank you for showing me that love really can conquer, all when it's combined with respect and gratitude and genuine effort to be better. I'm so proud of the person you've become and so grateful for the relationship we have now. You are my heart, my joy, and my greatest accomplishment, not because you're successful or accomplished in the world's eyes, but because you're kind and loving and thoughtful in the ways that really matter.